Welcome back to UX Evolved. I'm Eric Ellis. And today we're talking about a role that's facing some of the most dramatic AI disruption in our field, UX research. AI can analyze thousands of user interviews in seconds. It can identify patterns, generate personas, and even moderate usability tests. So where does that leave the humans who've built their careers on understanding users?
And so having those real conversations with humans and doing ethnographic research and observing users in their everyday environment, that's work that AI can't do, at least today.
For this episode, I wanted someone who's navigating this transformation from the beginning of their career. Not looking back on decades of experience, but living through AI's arrival in real time and adapting as they go.
When AI becomes more embedded in our work, it's even more crucial for researchers like myself to deliver those credible insights. It's all about credibility.
Miwako Zosel is a UX researcher who's doing something most researchers aren't. She's learning SQL and Python to analyze large data sets. Not because some job description required it, but because she saw where the profession was heading and decided to meet it there. In just 4 years, she's worked across wildly different domains: news media at McClatchy, hospitality tech at Cloudbeds, and now developer tools at SmartBear. Along the way, she's watched her role evolve from conducting user interviews to becoming what she calls the glue that connects patterns to human insight. She mentors junior researchers through ADP List, where the most common question she gets is it even a good time to transition into UX research? If you've ever wondered what the future of UX research looks like from someone building that future right now, this is the conversation. Miwako, welcome to UX Evolved. Welcome, Miwako, to UX Evolved. Miwako Zosel, we've worked together in a past life, but it's been a little while. It's been a minute, and I'm happy to have you.
I'm honored to be here. Thanks for having me.
Let's get to know each other again, because I really want to know what have you been up to lately? What are your passions these days? And tell me a little bit about who you're working for.
Yeah. So I started working at SmartBear, which is like a API testing software. So really a tool for developers, QAs, very technical people. And I'm a UX researcher there. I think since when we worked together, I've really honed in on how to incorporate AI. What does the evolved like UXR role look like? So I've taken up SQL and Python to start analyzing large data sets. I think it's something that I kept seeing more and more in UXR roles in this kind of new economy or new job market. So yeah.
Now we really have to back up, because you just said two words that I don't think I've heard user researchers mention before, and that's SQL and Python. So tell me a little bit more. What precipitated your drive to go learn those two foundational AI query languages?
Yeah, when I was between jobs, I was reflecting on what I love most about UX research. And one of the things that I really enjoy is distilling information from complex data. So I was looking at all these different job descriptions that are asking for SQL analysis skills, ability to look at quantitative data. It's kind of meshing data analyst and like product analyst and X research. The roles are evolving in that way, where X research from when I started about 4 years ago is very different from what is expected of us today. So
yeah, it was one of the things I was really looking forward to talking to you about. Is I notice on many podcasts that are focused on product management and AI and the business and the evolution, is everyone's talking to veterans, which is great. But then I'm like, well, but wait, we've got a whole cohort of designers and engineers and researchers who are going through this from the beginning of their career, that don't have the history of anything that has come from it. And I wonder what that feels like from your point of view.
When we talk about AI and how it's getting incorporated into UX research,
Hmm.
sometimes it's eerie, right? I was watching this AI moderated user interview where the AI was attempting small talk before you start talking to users, right? You're like, how's your day? What's your role like? And it was like, how is your day? What is your favorite TV show? And I was just like, cringing inside. It reminded me of the movie Her, where the main character falls in love with the AI system. When I talk to other UXers and ask them what are their thoughts on where our field is growing, like how do they see our field evolving, no one really knows. We're just kind of in it for the ride, but we're picking up skills and learning what we can and really adjusting as we're going.
Now, you've worked across very different environments, news media at McClatchy, hospitality tech at Cloudbeds, and now you're moving to this world of developer tools at SmartBear. Do you see consistent patterns? Do you see how humans interact with digital products regardless of the domain? Are there commonalities across these sectors that you bring to bear as a researcher, and maybe what might some of those be?
I actually remember you asking me this in the interview at Cloudbeds when I was interviewing. So I think I'll give a relatively similar answer, which is that consumers or users have high expectations of digital products, and that makes sense. But if your product is making it difficult for them to do their job, they'll most likely churn, or they'll just submit a lot of support tickets, right? Either way, you have unhappy users. So one of the UX heuristics I think about a lot is maintaining consistency and standards. So your users shouldn't have to learn something new just to use your product. So whether it's a news app like the ones that I researched at McClatchy, the property management systems at Cloudbeds, and now API testing tools, it should be consistent across your products as well as the industry. So if you try to reinvent the wheel, that can cause frustrations for users who are most likely context switching between various products and workflows in their day to day.
That heuristic consistency comes up, gosh, feels like in my role on a daily basis. And now the elephant has come into the room, which is what used to be very difficult in maintaining or to deciphering where consistency lies. Now AI can analyze thousands of data, user interviews, persona generation, data patterns. As you mentioned, it can try to simulate testing scenarios, and some it does better than others. As a researcher, what's beyond the comment you made earlier of like, gosh, where is this going to go? What's your honest reaction to these capabilities? Incorporating AI into a researcher's life, what works right now, and what's maybe not quite ready for prime time?
It is eerie and scary. When I talk to other researchers, we're like, what does this mean for our roles, right? When you start experimenting with these tools, you find limitations. So, like in qualitative research, for example, specifically sentiment analysis. So, AI can count how often topics are mentioned by users and be able to group them, but it misses kind of the crucial context of how these topics were actually discussed in those
Mm.
conversations. And as the researcher, you also bring the context of what the business objectives are. What's the company culture? How does your stakeholders want to receive research? What do they resonate with the most? And when you take the quantitative side, I saw that even analyzing large data sets and running SQL queries, often it's not pulling in the correct data. So I hear from other researchers that we view it AI as a good research assistant, but definitely not capable of replacing our profession.
Yeah, yeah, I think what I'm hearing you say is there's a humanistic side that is not replicable very easily, both on the moderation side or the information gathering side in front of your users, but also on the insights analysis and presentation side. And it sounds to me like what you're saying is you're still very much involved in both. There's no hands off the wheel on either side of the equation.
Right, right. Yep, exactly.
I've seen some really crazy stuff out there. What's the difference between a persona that's being created from raw data patterns versus one that's
Mhm.
informed by what you mentioned, that kind of empathetic, humanistic
Yeah.
side? Well, how would you know the difference?
Yeah. I think the key difference is that real human conversations captures complexity that data
Mm,
patterns miss, right? So when personas, if you take those AI personas that are created solely from data patterns, depending on where that data is coming from, it can reinforce stereotypes and generalizations that likely overrepresent certain demographic groups and perspectives. I was just looking at this research done this past February by these psychologists at U Chicago, Stanford, NYU, and Princeton. And they found that unbiased LLMs still form biased associations around race, gender, and age. So, that being said, AI generated personas aren't necessarily representative of those real users or populations that we researchers talk to. So they might miss out on designing for certain user segments, leave out certain priorities or needs. Our users aren't generic or cookie cutter. They're real people with specific jobs to be done, as we say in UX, that you'd never discover without actually talking to them. And so having those real conversations with humans and doing ethnographic research and observing users in their everyday environment, that's work that AI can't do, at least today.
I used to love your presentations that you would give where you would include not just the verbatims but the video snippets of your conversation with them and the actual back and forth that you would have to make it really feel like it was back in the day and we were in a lab and they were with us in real life.
Yeah, yeah. And that's something I think over the years of being a researcher that creates this shared empathy, right, or in the room where your leadership, your stakeholders are hearing directly from users, and it's not just me or another researcher saying, "Hey, this is what our users are struggling with," or "This is what they're saying." Having them speak for themselves is really where we can drive home, the key takeaways from the research.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the tediousness, maybe where AI really helps. You've talked about sentiment analysis. We can talk survey analysis, basic usability metrics. I mean, some of these things seem really ripe for AI automation where maybe things that you spent a lot of time doing took you away from the behavioral aspect where AI is just not there yet. Where are your thoughts on where AI helps you in your role today?
Yeah, I think definitely when you're starting with a lot of qualitative data and you just want to get a head start. So it will help you create pretty broad, high level groups. So categorize your sticky notes. I'm thinking like specifically like in FigJam or
Mm.
Miro, where it has these AI features there. So it helps you overcome this blank page syndrome or writer's block when you're starting the analysis process of research. Like, where do I get started? So AI can help give you that head start. I think the other component with usability metrics, it can track what users did, the specific completion rates. I remember doing those manually early on in my career, like literally having my phone timer set and clicking start when
Yeah.
they started the task and then, clicking stop when they did. So automating or streamlining some of that, tracking those metrics, I think AI can definitely enhance our work there.
Even the tools that you and I have both used, and I'm not going to mention which ones they are, but the tools that we have used where recordings happen and we're analyzing gobs of data on recordings really doesn't, especially in a B2B context. I guess if there's a funnel and you're talking about conversion, you can really start to see patterns pretty easily, and AI could definitely help there. But in B2B, wow, I never found much there unless there was really it was a multimodal research study where you could take that and then juxtapose it against something you heard in real life from what people were doing and infer from that.
Yeah. Yeah. Talking about the limitations of AI is connecting the dots, right? So, as researchers, we have the context of doing research across different product areas, especially if you're a dispersed team. And if there's a certain theme that comes up in run research, we can be like, oh, actually, we heard that from these set of segment of users or in this, area of our product. So, that's where kind of the strategic nature of UX research comes in. And that's maybe where AI is lacking.
Yeah, not there. We talked at the top of the episode about a little bit about experience, and you're I would say you're not starting out, but you're also mentoring other researchers through a DP list. And I'm curious, what questions are kind of the more junior side, the junior researchers asking you about your role, about AI? Are they worried? What's the sentiment these days from a just getting started research perspective?
Yeah, so I've mentored, career changers, so people, where I was, the same boat that I was a couple of years ago, and also recent college grads in a different field like academia and
Mm,
trying to break into tech. The top question is how do we stand out in the candidate pool given the competitive job market? And then related to that with AI, they're asking what courses should they be taking? Are there any specific ones that hiring managers look for in their resume? What skills should they acquire? And then the third, I'd say, loaded question is it even a good time to transition into UX? I tell them to experiment in low stakes environments or projects, build out your foundational understanding, learn about the current trends. There's so many great newsletters out there and, online classes. And then the how to stand out part, I think that hasn't changed in the past couple of years, like crafting your elevator pitch, right? How are you applying your learnings, the skills that you're acquiring to real projects or case studies?
as you're speaking, I'm thinking about what you said earlier of the things that AI just can't. You just can't AIize, which is like the human equation in any role. The knowledge you have to not bias yourself, knowing full well that an AI assistant will and could, even if you give it intents not to. The context to listen and understand and walk a mile in someone's shoes.
I was just reading an article, as I'm studying SQL and acquiring those skills, like someone was like, how valuable is learning SQL if now we have AI? Why can't
Right.
AI, query data for us? And the short answer is you have to know enough about SQL or the subject matter to know when it's wrong. So AI will hallucinate. You have to catch it when, oh, this is a little off or this is way off, right? So
Right.
you still have to be the kind of expert in your subject matter area to know how to use it, how can it be valuable.
If you had an AI research assistant tomorrow and it could handle reliably and without hallucinating the data analysis and pattern recognition 24/7, if that agent was a reliable agent, how would that change you? How would that change how you spend time as a researcher?
I would definitely spend less time searching for past research documents and digging through Google Drives. I'm thinking, especially in an example of if I'm getting up to speed or I'm onboarding to a new team or even onboarding to a new project, having that desk research, shall we say, be faster with AI
Mm.
queries. And so if I'm taking on a research from another researcher, they're handing off a project to me, I could type in a query like, what did we learn from the past research? What are some of the knowledge gaps? Like what can I bring to the table? What do we not know in this area? So I would be able to reallocate that time to focus on having more informed strategic decisions or discussions with stakeholders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go between the lines of the things that you truly don't know you don't know,
Yeah.
rather than accidentally spend time on things you actually knew and just couldn't get to.
Yeah.
You couldn't locate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's really good.
Yeah.
This might be the key question for for UX research's future. Products are continuously increasingly using AI to make decisions about user experience. But then who validates that the AI actually understands the user needs correctly? I think this is kind of going into the question you talked about before, which is like, well, you can't, the reliability factor is still not there. And it doesn't matter what you're doing. If we're talking research or we're talking code, I mean, it happens to me on a
Yeah.
daily basis. But
Mhm.
there, I don't know if it's a gate, I don't know if it's a safeguard, but how do we actually know that AI understands user needs correctly? And maybe it's getting down to what you're suggesting, which is, well, if you know the fundamental SQL, it's actually going to give you the clues as to whether you're headed in the right direction or not. Is that it?
It's really that human oversight. So AI is a great starting point rather than a
Mm,
replacement for kind of the human judgment that comes into our work. So the critical thinking, the contextual understanding and empathy that's required to truly validate user needs in a research context, that remains fundamentally human work.
yeah.
So when AI becomes more embedded in our work, it's even more crucial for researchers like myself to deliver those credible insights. It's all about credibility, like checking its sources, where did the AI base its findings from? And yeah, so you have to know enough about the skill that you're asking AI to do or to produce to use it wisely.
I
Yeah.
got to believe your time at McClatchy serves you well in that context because AI or no AI, checking sources would have been huge in the journalistic world. And we've not had anybody from that sector on the podcast yet, but you were focused on underrepresented news consumers. And it makes me wonder, like, if AI had been around when you were at McClatchy, I wonder if that would have changed the way you would have operated your role at that time.
Yeah, that's interesting you mentioned that because so one of the main research initiatives I was leading was how to design news products for younger generations, so Gen Z and millennial consumers. And so there's a lot of stereotypes around younger people. They only look at their iPhones or their
Mm.
social media. They don't have newspaper subscriptions. And like I mentioned earlier, the recent psychology research that showed that unbiased LLMs still form those biased associations across age groups and gender, all those stereotypes. So if I think back to if I did that research today with just AI generated personas, for example,
Yeah.
we may have used data that overrepresented like tech savvy Gen Zs or tech forward users and failed to address the needs of less tech savvy users. That's a key step in research is recruiting. And so making sure that we have different demographic groups and personas. And so we have to make sure that we're addressing the needs of all user segments. And that's really where the human intuition comes in.
Yeah. I also think about it's also your training on how you write intents with AI and playing devil's advocate with your AI to go back and have it do a self check of did you truly represent on your responses, or are we looking at this cohort with open eyes and challenging it as well? And again, not saying that it negates our need to truly be humans, but it does give you another layer of don't take everything at face value when you're using a tool like that.
Yep, yep. I heard from one of the researchers I look up to, Nikki Anderson.
Mm.
She talks about when you're using AI, ask it, did you hallucinate? Like, did you make up your response? And I never thought of that. That's such a common sense thing to do. I started doing that, like asking, did you hallucinate? And that's one way to work with kind of the limitations or, what AI's capabilities are.
You've worked with cross-functional teams. We've worked on with them together, engineering, product. Certainly, it's the life of a researcher. How do you see the researcher's role evolving when AI is generating what it can generate, product hypotheses, user insights? What does that mean to researchers when it comes to the team?
Yeah. I do think that the researcher role is becoming more strategic and not diminished. One of the things that we do, and it's kind of the nature of the role, is acting as the bridge connector across these different teams that may not be talking to one another. So, say that your company's new initiative was expanding to larger businesses. It's valuable to collaborate with, say, the sales team who are actively talking to prospects, or product marketing who's trying to get at the core of what's the value proposition of the products. So if or when AI is is used to generate these hypotheses about the products, our job as researchers would be to take those AI patterns, validate them through user research, talk to humans, and see, does this cluster of user complaints actually represent a meaningful pain point, or are they just vocal edge cases? So this means that we would need to educate engineering and product teams on how we attain those credible insights by and validating by speaking with users. And so all the teams that I've been involved, been on, involve research early and often in kind of the product strategy or the roadmap, but I could see that becoming even more important when AI is brought into the process. AI generated hypotheses can definitely speed up the upfront research,
Yeah.
which will change the overall research timeline and overall planning. So definitely something I'll need to adapt my approach moving forward.
I like what you said. Research as glue. It's the glue of the future. I couldn't agree more. I don't know of another practice, maybe outside of the design role, where you have to dip your toe in just about every major facet of a business, including the customers who all the other teams, and unless you're go to market or your customer success, don't have time to do. And so you're like, that's my job. So I love that. And I agree. Hard to have that be the exclusive provenance of AI. So with that, let's move forward a little bit and talk about the evolution. If you looked at UX research 5 years from now, what is a UX research? What is a UX research? It's a long time. So we're really talking about a velocity that we can't imagine what AI is, but what is that role?
I think that definitely ethical research judgment will be crucial. So, as AI becomes more powerful at extracting insights, someone needs to ask whether we should be researching certain questions. How do we protect user privacy? And then when do research practices cross ethical lines? So, this requires, again, that human input of the value-based reasoning that goes beyond pattern recognition. And, we talked about this a little bit earlier, the strategic research, that will still be fundamentally human. So AI might be able to execute on research plans and kind of complete a checklist, but it can't negate, say, the political landscape of a company to determine which research questions actually matter. So as researchers, we translate these vague requests into actionable research goals while considering team dynamics and business constraints of the company.
You've got a lot of tools in your tool belt. We didn't even hit on one of them, which is the psychology background that you have. But you've got from psychology research to UX research. Tell me about. Let's kind of go back to the beginning. What skills have you relied on that have been the most transferable, AI or no AI? What beyond learning Python, what skills might you advise someone wanting to enter the UX research, and not just skills, but really knowledge and wisdom? What's helped you the most?
When we're talking soft skills, I'd say stakeholder management is one of those skills that is applicable in any role that I've been in. My first job out of college was being a recruiting coordinator, scheduling interviews with global candidates. At McClatchy, I was the sole researcher, and I had to find ways to share research findings to both technical stakeholders, but also non-technical. So finding creative ways to really engage with different audiences. And the other component or another skill that I've applied across my roles is synthesizing and translating data in a digestible format. And I think I mentioned this, but it's one of my favorite parts of being a UX researcher is making sense of the data and the noise and delivering it through storytelling. So in a way that it's relatable to people, builds empathy for the users that we build products for. So for new UXers coming into the industry, I would advise them to understand how to navigate an organization. And I know that sounds a little general or broad, but really understanding when and how to deliver insights for that maximum impact. A mentor recommended this book to me called The First 90 Days. It's by Michael Watkins. It's written for managers and leadership or leaders onboarding to a new company, but even as an individual contributor, I found it valuable in understanding that broad business know-how of how to make the most of your onboarding, but also like how do you orient yourself and how do you work with different teams and perspectives. Yeah.
You're a researcher after my own heart. When you mentioned storytelling, I'm rereading Robert Reifstahl's Demonstrating to Win, which
Okay.
has a go-to-market slant to it, and it's an older 2011, it's a little older, but I think you're onto something there of the way in which you present the findings through. I think about like the Snow White effect with Airbnb and how they literally drew Disney animation from frame to frame to explain the host experience and the guest experience and the formative stages of the company. I just am so inspired by that because I'm sure it gelled the whole company to a vision. And I wonder too if maybe the end of a researcher's job to be done isn't just here's the presentation or here's the PDF, but it's I'm going to walk you through a mile in the shoes I just walked through. And that storytelling effect is something I don't often see from researchers, but gosh, when it's there, it's really powerful.
Absolutely. And yeah, it's all about making the insights actionable, right? The last thing you want as a researcher is to put all this time and effort into a presentation or whatever format you put your findings in, and then for it to just sit on a shelf that just gets dusty and no one ever opens the document,
Right.
right? So, and that's something I think through trial and error I learned. Like definitely my early presentations were so I don't think I would even want to open them. Like they're so like, what do I want to communicate rather than what does my audience care about? And I
Right.
think that's definitely one of the most important parts of storytelling. I think you and I have talked about in our previous X team as well.
Yeah, 100%. All right, well, we've come to the closing question here. This is a question that I ask everybody who I interview. If you could redesign one thing in the universe, anything at all, whether it's a widget, whether it's a service, whether it's the government, whatever it is, if you could redesign one thing in the universe, what would it be and why?
So, as someone currently going through the process of getting their driver's license, I would say the DMV.
Okay.
Um, So the DMV, as we all know, I think it's a universally anxiety-inducing environment and experience that, every one of us has to go through because it's a mandatory service. We have no alternative. There's unclear processes, long wait times, confusing forms, and on top of that, like stressed people, stressed staff. And I know that you're a Disney fan, so I draw my inspiration from Epcot.
Okay.
So Epcot, because they're great at the queue management. So, they set clear expectations. They provide entertainment while you're waiting. They guide you through a complex process. And they also use those digital tools wisely to reduce the friction, but also maintaining those human touch points where they matter most. I will say, I think the one challenge with this redesign would be doing the ethnographic research. So, like doing those and DMV waiting rooms. I can only imagine how that would go, but I do think that users would have a lot to say. So, I would gather a lot of data
Maybe
there.
that is a good reason to put an AI robot, literally not a bot, but a physical robot in that queue, and just be like, I'm not going to touch this
Yeah.
one. This is good one, Miwako. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed my time. I learned a lot from you, as I do always, and welcome you back anytime.
Thank you so much, Eric. It's been a
Thanks.
pleasure.